We could be suffering, we could have nothing, and it's okay.
Aside from the governance factor, what's your expectation of the monarchy?
Expectation of the monarchy? I think, given the prominence that they have across the planet, they need to be, I think, as what Paul writes to Timothy with regards to elders in the Bible, do you know what I mean? I think it should be on par with that. Do you know what I mean? They should be beyond reproach, stuff like that. And my expectations, if you've got an office which is that high, do you know what I mean? That there isn't really margin for error, and we should hold leaders to a higher standard anyway. You know, that's why people crucify leaders that screw up in culture. You know, it's like a big bucket of crabs, isn't it? And one crab starts to make a run for it, and as soon as they get too high, all the other crabs pull them back down, sort of thing. It's quite humbling, I guess. But for me, I don't really have I'm not really strong viewed on that either way. I am strong viewed on the racism thing, though, if there's truth on it. I do think there's two sides to every story. And the palace issued a statement in response to all that. But for me, racism is a sin, blatantly. Do you know what I mean? There's no excuse for that, and that should be warranted. That needs to be dealt with. Adam Pearson, what are you saying? They need to be totally transparent and accountable. Absolutely, they do. Absolutely, Adam. Accountability and authority are inseparable. I agree with Adam massively on this. If you guys don't know about Adam Pearson, he's a good friend of mine, and he's done a lot of stuff on TV and stuff. He's very hot on this sort of stuff. Check some of his stuff out online as well. He's a really good guy. He's been on BBC and like loads of other things, quite a bit actually. So big shout to Ads. But yeah, like, what's your take on it, Jay? Like, what do you think? What's your expectations of the monarchy and so forth?
I guess it's maybe coming from like a post-colonial background. I just kind of feel like my standard is like so low, kind of in terms of the institution, and not in necessarily derogatory sense in terms of thinking ill, but it's almost like there wouldn't be anything I'd say the monarchy could do that would kind of make me think or like be shocked or think less of them, or just from a standpoint of like colonialism, you know, because I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about as an institution, you know. Like we can take it as far back as kind of, you know, anyone would want, from your piracy, if you want to go back just a few hundred years, your Francis Drakes and things like that. If you want to go back further, and you know, just the development of empire as a thing. Yeah, it's just curious to me, I guess, to see at what point there's a separation between that. So, you know, so say something like the mafia, for example. So the mafia have committed crimes historically. It's like if they have good rebranding, how should we then view the mafia? Should we have high standards of, and then, because, you know, even something like an eldership standard, like I wouldn't even put them anywhere near anything like that. I'd be more looking at coming to Christ rather than kind of necessarily the eldership standard, because, you know, like I think as an institution, it's just, I think it's hard to justify, and the only justification I see for the institution is a monetary one, where the income from the royal family is higher than the expenditure that we spend on the royal family. If I were to narrow it down into a box of where I'd put them in the same place as any Instagram influencer or someone like that. They generate income for the country. That's as far as I'd take it. If we got a Disneyland in this country, it might be able to supersede the effectiveness of, I think, the royals. If the main, you know, I don't think we rely on them at this stage for diplomacy. I've at least not in my lifetime, I don't ever remember there was a war about to start, and then the Queen stepped in and was like, "Stop, halt Parliament." I need to go and speak to insert country here. If anything, it's usually the opposite, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess for me, I don't have that intrinsic value. Maybe I could get explanation maybe as to more of why people maybe do have a higher standard that they kind of expect or.
I don't know. It's an interesting one, the monarchy. I don't know. I think different people have different views, different opinions, and so forth, stemming from different things. Some people get quite passionate about it as well, for better or for worse. Guys who are logging on, big up. Good to see you all. Morning. Marissa, I'm guessing you're stateside. If you are, let us know. Guys, let us know your thoughts on this Harry and Meg thing. This is sort of just what we're talking about at the moment. We're going to be talking a bit about faith and faithfulness and that sort of thing in just a bit, but we are just addressing this issue at the moment because it seems to be quite prevalent, I guess. Which is good. So, like the thing which is interesting for me, so Piers Morgan, he sort of lost his job or stepped down or like whatever sort of happened with him, but he got 41,000 complaints in one day.
He ticked every box though, man. He ticked every box. Mental health, suicide, postnatal pregnancy, feminists, women as a whole, Americans, race, gingers, like literally like.
He's got to be in the Guinness Book of Records or something for that.
Yeah,
because I don't get 41,000 complaints in a day. I don't even get 41 sometimes.
And let's just put this out there as well. Like GMB's audience is not black people, by the way. So let's just clear that one up straight off. Like, I don't know black people waking up for GMB. You know, it's just the odd person that's on it. Like honestly, so that's not a part of like any black culture or anything. So no one for a second start thinking that en masse black people have revolted against GMB, and that is, you know, yeah, that wasn't us. But
love that, man. Love that. Gosh.
Oh man, help me out though, man, because you come on, you're more part of British culture than me. Spell out the what is it? Because as far as I can see, like, and this bit is speculation now, but it seems like they're intrinsically a part of the kind of the culture internally of people, and I think that's why there's an emotional attachment. So can you give me some insight into that?
Yeah, like I think for me, yeah, I might be born in London, British, English, whatever post-it note people want to stick on my forehead. But for me, I think my identity, who I am, I don't class myself as British or English or anything else-ish. Do you know what I mean? I class myself as a citizen of heaven. Do you know what I mean? I'm not made. I'm made for eternity. So my identity and who I am as a man, you know, characterizes those elements which sort of go with that. Do you know what I mean? I'm faithful to my wife. I love Jesus. I serve and support people. I give money to charity. I help people wherever I can feasibly do. It's not something that I have to do. It's something I get to do. It's my heart. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've been in a full-time ministry for best part since becoming a Christian. And the reason for that, like there was a season when I was thinking about stepping out of full-time ministry. And my wife said to me, but Mark, you're like, if you're not being paid to do it, you're just going to do it anyway. I was just like, yeah, I am. Like, do you know what I mean? It's a heart thing, isn't it? You're just like, I'm just going to do this regardless of whether I get paid for it or not.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think identity at core. Do you know what I mean? As a Christian, we want to live Christ-centered lives, and everything that sort of looks like. So, I think this whole thing with the monarchy, etc. Like, I haven't got the energy to invest in that. Do you know what I mean? I'm not overly fussed either way. And it might seem like a bit of a passive view on it, but for me, I've got bigger fish to fry. I'm not worried about about it to the same extent as others. Don't get me wrong, I think the sin side of stuff, like I said before, that gets me a bit more. And given the status which they have on a global platform, obviously that warrants addressing, and it should be addressed, and rightfully so. There should be some sort of investigation, or that there should be something. Do you know what I mean? You can't just sort of do that without a doubt. So yeah, and the problem with hearsay is there's never any tone, there's never any context, and things can get messy very quickly, and that's why it warrants an investigation. So, okay, who said what was said, when was it said, why was it said, what was the context of the discussion, what was the tone it was said in, what was the intent? Okay, we need to deal with this, or we don't, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? So, but one way or another, there needs to be some sort of light shone on it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, even in that, I don't think there will, but I guess, but where I try and be sympathetic is, so it takes me kind of jumping outside of my body a bit, into thinking of, so for some people, in the same way that you can perhaps have like maybe a hero or someone who's a source of pride for you in your life. If I were to try and parallel it, I guess maybe like let me try and push it outside of football at least. Saying like maybe a Usain Bolt from a Jamaican background. If somebody was accusing him of doing something, I perhaps would have a vested interest in that, and it maybe be a source of pride for whatever reason, which I guess maybe because just as a person where I am, like you were saying, I kind of view that kind of celeb worship or that, you know, that plastic idol having just been a really slippery slope. But I can understand how for a section of British culture, the kind of cultural identity can at least be partially founded within this institution. So if you attack or say something negative about the royal family, it's seen as an attack on British values, or, you know, something that they take value or pride in. So I can see that, and that's the one perspective that I can kind of find as an anchor point to kind of relate to this, the anti kind of Meghan backlash, because, you know, there's one dad, one mum, one estranged sister, and a husband. Those are the only people actually, you know, directly involved at this point. Do you know what I mean? But the reaction to it is so strong from like both sides.
Well, it's a massive thing. I think like there's the whole trashing. You know, you've got people sort of saying like Meghan had an agenda, you know, and one way or another, kudos to them. I think Archwell became the biggest promoted company overnight. Like they did their marketing all right, didn't they?
Yeah.
I hadn't even heard, and most people hadn't heard of the company Archwell until last night, and it's blasted all over the place, which is interesting. I think that you've got the hearsay element, the gossip element. You've got the indirect accusation, or element of a potential accusation. There's no sort of clarity on it, and that's where for me it's sort of it's like gossip, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And it's just like the media will lap it up. Of course they will. Do you know what I mean? It'll be.
How serious is the accusation, do you feel?
Sorry?
How serious do you feel the accusation is?
How serious? It's flipping well serious if it's factual. Absolutely. But I think for me, it's about like how factual is it first and foremost? Because I think before we start crucifying people, you want to make sure that, like, this is why for me, if I could say one comment on it, on the whole situation, I'd say this warrants an investigation. That's it.
But it's like, I guess my perspective, I guess on that part. So it sounds like we're talking about the whole racial baby thing, right? The worry of the color of the baby and stuff. I guess for me, it's like, as someone who's mixed relationship, whatever you want to call it, mixed kids or whatever you want to call it, them, whatever. It's like it's such a norm that, you know, it's like one of the go-to. Like I know when someone like sees my kids or whatever, by and large, it's likely that you'll get that kind of color comment. where, you know, it's kind of consistently been something that's even joked about or whatever else in between. Even like stuff like, are you sure it's yours or his yours and that kind of thing? Just because obviously, you know, color can be on any spectrum between a husband and wife, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, I guess it's so normalized to me that I wouldn't even be, it wouldn't trigger an investigation or anything from my end, I think, at this point. And it's like, I guess it's also coming from the perspective of someone said something that you found racially loaded. It's like, that's like a pretty common, you know, thing. It's not that high level. I think it only kind of becomes high level if it's like a rarity in someone's kind of airspace, you know, that is uncommon, like a royal, you know, the amount of people in that house. It's almost like, just statistically, you're going to get some racial abuse if you stay there long enough. Someone's going to say something that you find offensive from a racial perspective.
No, you're right. That there's always there's a lot of lurking sin in a lot of people, be that racial, be that just outright abusive in one way or another. And let's be clear, call racism for what it is wrong and it is sinful. Do you know what I mean? It's not like God has favourites, you know. We all bleed red blood. God loves us all. He loves us all equally. None of us could ever earn his love. And if God, that's clearly God's take on stuff. And therefore we should be proactive in and calling that stuff out. If it's sort of like, if it offends God, what should we do about it? What's our position on it?
We could be so